service members were going into the field in Afghanistan and Iraq with technology less advanced than they had at home when they were ordering an Uber. And that seemed crazy to me.
You're watching Fortune Daily. I'm Ellie Austin. Here's what I'm thinking about today. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has announced on Instagram that she is freezing her eggs. The representative for New York's 14th congressional district, who is 36, posted a video injecting herself with hormones as part of the process. After much consideration, she said, she decided to freeze her eggs to, quote, feel more in control of my life. She also wants to speak about it publicly, she added, to show, quote, more depictions of women living full lives in every context and every choice. But she acknowledged that this transparency comes with political risk. And actually, hours after the post, she went on TV and said that she has not ruled out a 2028 presidential run. Now, in 2026, egg freezing is not unusual. I've done it, many of my friends have too. In fact, a UCLA study found that the number of planned elective egg freezing cycles nearly quadrupled between 2014 and 2021, increasing from around 4,000 to more than 16,000 nationwide. But the attention on AOC's announcement shows that it remains highly unusual for a high-profile woman with very public ambition, whether that be to lead a company or a country, to be candid about the possibility that she might want children in the near future. Why on earth is that still the case? Well, in many spheres of professional life, women are still judged through the lens of their private reproductive and family decisions in ways that men are not, and quite frankly, have never been. Last week on this show, we discussed how former OpenAI exec Fiji Simo's decision to step back from the company to focus on her health normalizes a really important conversation about leadership and illness. In the same way, AOC publicly stating that she is able to simultaneously consider motherhood and a run for the highest office in the land challenges outdated but still very entrenched views about both the lives of women and who gets to be a leader. On a personal note, there's another reason why AOC's announcement feels so important. So any woman who has undergone fertility treatment, whether that be egg freezing or IVF, knows all too well the emotional, the physical, and the financial cost that it comes with. And AOC says in her stories that her egg freezing cycle will cost her around $8,000 to $9,000 out of pocket, which, believe it or not, in this country is actually on the lower side of what the procedure can cost. I know because I have lived it, and I've seen many of my close friends do the same, that women are generally expected not to talk about fertility treatment. It is still, bizarrely, taboo. It might make other people uncomfortable. And so we navigate this huge life event silently, injecting ourselves in between meetings, turning up to big pitches and presentations pumped up on all kind of weird hormones, and making big financial sacrifices to give us the best chance of the future we want. And we don't talk about it at work for fear of appearing weak or distracted, which is hugely ironic given the sheer resilience that this entire process requires. Generally speaking, and it's something I think about a lot, our male peers who want children or might want children one day are not grappling with all of this alongside their 9-to-5s. They're not looking at their bank accounts and being forced to choose between a nice summer vacation and a shot at their future family. By publicly showing all of us what many women are quietly going through behind the scenes, AOC is, number one, making us feel less alone. She's also destigmatizing fertility treatment as a component of professional ambition, hugely important. She's challenging leadership double standards, and hopefully she's forcing employers to confront the very real financial and physical realities of reproductive care. Next, we're talking to senior writer and editor Allie Garfinkle about whether the defense tech bubble is about to burst. And later, editorial director Kristin Stoller shares with us the latest development in the future of work and your resume. More Fortune Daily ahead. Allie, hello.
Hello, Allie.
So let's do a bit of scene setting here. So back in 2018, I remember thousands of Google employees writing to Sundar Pichai saying, quote, "We believe that Google should not be in the business of war." The landscape seems to have changed quite dramatically since then. How have we got to this point?
There are a couple of things that really changed. The first is there started to be massive success for defense tech companies. The biggest of them, of course, is Anduril, valued over $60 billion, makes all the things you would expect, missiles, various forms of drones. Many of them are deployed in conflicts right now. So for a long time, I think there was a sense that defense companies couldn't succeed. That changed. And if you're wondering how, first, venture money started flowing into the space and you started to have a couple of proof points. The other thing that kind of happened is the world evolved. There was a sense that geopolitical uncertainty was really changing. It also is one of those things where I think people talk about the Trump administration as the reason the defense tech boom has occurred. I actually think it's all venture money. Because actually the shift that we were talking about, Ellie, started to evolve long before Trump was in office, during the Biden administration even. I would say the biggest thing that changed maybe ultimately was China. There was a sense for a long time that there was no way China would invade Taiwan, and over sort of the last few years, that cultural sense has evolved, and hence a lot of VCs have said, well, we see an opportunity here.
And you speak to VCs day in, day out in your job. Is there any sense of an ethical grappling that's going on their side of things when it comes to channeling money into these defense tech companies at this moment?
Well, and let's be clear, what we're saying here, are VCs okay with backing weapons companies?
100%.
And the answer in many cases is yes. There is some sort of grappling, definitely. There are firms I know that don't feel comfortable investing in the space for one reason or another. That being said, I think they see an opportunity to make money, potentially. Now, I think it's possible that optimism is a little misguided. But also, I think there is a sense of, particularly in America, the year of America 250, that backing defense companies is maybe even a moral good in some cases. If you talk to the folks in Andreessen Horowitz, for example, that is certainly what they would say.
Tell me a bit more about that.
About American dynamism. You want to hear about American dynamism?
How do they rationalize that point of view? I'm interested.
So it's the sort of thing that I think, actually, there are a couple of views. I mean, there's the first that is very raw America, right? And exactly the thing you're imagining in every possible way. And it is militaristic, even in some capacities. However, I'd say the point of view I think is more interesting, perhaps, is articulated by the CEO of Anduril when I asked him about it. I point blank asked Brian Schimpf when I was profiling him for the magazine, how do you explain to your kids that you make weapons that can kill people?
Great question.
And what he sort of said was, well, I don't think you shy away from it, but I also think you don't celebrate it. And I think there is a sense that on one hand, America does need better military technology. And maybe it's important to talk about exactly why, because I actually have come to believe that's unequivocally true. It's how I actually got comfortable covering these companies. But it is also the sort of thing where I would say it comes down to two things for some of these folks. One, America does need better tech. And I guess in the end, if you don't celebrate it, you are still engaging with reality. I think is part of the way people think about it. Would I personally build weapons? I don't know. But I've come to understand the perspective.
I'm interested that you found it complex to report on this sector at one point in your career.
So at the very beginning, I was very nervous about it. I was somebody who's always interested in World War II. Like there was a moment in my life, Ellie, where I wanted to be a World War II historian. I know that sounds insane.
Did not know that about you.
Yeah, weird fact about me. That was like one of the many things I wanted to be when I grew up at one point. But I was very nervous about thinking about these things in real time. I do sometimes wonder if giving something airtime is functionally the same as endorsing it. And with this, it felt especially important for all of the ethical reasons you raised. However, as I started spending time with the problem, two things became clear to me. One, my sort of comfort with the idea that World War III was impossible was extremely misplaced. Xi Jinping has said he wants to invade Taiwan, and if he does in any way that we could understand, that would trigger a series of extraordinary, anomalous geopolitical events. So I think I got to the place where I realized that an invasion of Taiwan was possible. And two, I started reading a lot about the state of military technology. So military technology, as it has sort of been established over the last few decades, is built by a couple of key companies known as defense primes. Think Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman.
The big ones.
The big ones, the ones you've heard of. And the reality is, a lot of them haven't been innovating as fast as we have come to be used to, especially people, if you're someone like me who's been covering Silicon Valley. And eventually what I realized was people, service members, were going into the field in Afghanistan and Iraq with technology less advanced than they had at home when they were ordering an Uber. And that seemed crazy to me. Like, I had one guy tell me, he's like, yeah, I spent almost 20 years in the desert with like a pen and a pad and a helicopter, not knowing what the guy across the hangar was doing. And that struck me as kind of insane. So I sort of got on board, I think, in certain ways with some of what some of these folks were saying. And I did come to the conclusion that it actually is not only an important thing to cover, but is a valid perspective to have, even if you do have some discomfort with the idea that it absolutely, they are weapons, right? And I think I will go so far as to say one thing I've come to find really interesting is a lot of defense tech folks are very honest about it. They're very comfortable with all of the edges. In a way that's not true if like you're running a SaaS company. A lot of people will be like, yes, we make weapons and we believe that's important.
In one of your pieces that I read, you spoke to a 12-year veteran of Palantir who compared these defense tech companies to teenagers, saying they're still in their teenage years, they're relatively nascent. Is there a degree of inexperience in how these companies are being run? Or in your opinion, is that a misguided statement?
So I think that the awkward teenage years phrase is important not for the experience, because actually you can be really experienced. A lot of the people running these companies are veterans, for example. However, just because you can build a drone does not mean you can sell it to the United States government. One of the key sort of tension points in defense is procurement. I don't know how much you've heard about procurement, but
not as much as you, Abby, so educate me.
So like the short version of the procurement 101 is that everyone says the Army buys technology too slowly and develops it too slowly. And that the defense primes are also in on that, and everyone is incentivized to build as slowly as possible in certain ways. And I think in certain ways that criticism is a touch unfair, because a lot of the time the technology they build is extraordinary. That being said, there are also many, many cases where something built is extraordinary 1 out of 4 times, like the F-35, for example. It's a stealth fighter jet that is a source of much controversy. A lot of money was spent to develop it, and they don't always work, Ellie.
Which is an issue, I would imagine.
Yes, a very big issue. That being said, it's one of those things where if you talk to a lot of folks in defense, they're very excited because they're like, oh my God, we can build all these incredible things. We have venture backing now. That being said, it doesn't mean that the government is willing to buy it from you. The sort of golden goose in defense tech is something called a program of record, which actually doesn't have a good definition. This is classic government bureaucracy stuff, but a program of record is the thing that makes a defense tech company viable. If you're talking about inexperience, one of the areas of inexperience is a lot of these startups do not have the lobbying capacities or anything even remotely close to the capacities of something like, say, Lockheed Martin.
I want to pull back a second and think about what can leaders in all different sectors learn from what's happening right now in this industry. What does it teach us about the direction of business, the direction of venture?
I think that's really interesting. Well, I will say I do think a lot of venture capitalists are going to lose a lot of money in the defense tech boom. I think that's maybe inevitable. I think leaders should probably think about the fact that geopolitical uncertainty is here to stay, and how to sort of evolve with that, because I think that sort of assuming, oh, China's going to be stable, I think there's a lot of assuming that everything will be as it once was. I think that's kind of a natural human instinct. But I think it's pretty clear if you just look at the defense tech boom, a lot of the geopolitical things you and I grew up with, a lot of the assumptions we could make are no longer necessarily true.
Allie, that's all so interesting. Thank you so much for coming to explain this incredibly complex sector to us. And please stick around, because I have something else that I want to talk to you about in the Anatomy of a Deal segment, which is completely different.
Hard pivot. We're going to do such a hard pivot.
Allie, we're back. We're talking about marketplace companies. So tell us how Whatnot works.
So Whatnot is a live commerce platform. Live selling, like I get in front of a camera and say, here is my lamp. I love my lamp. Here are the things you should know about my lamp. Would you like to buy my lamp? Now imagine Whatnot has many, many sellers selling all kinds of things, from all kinds of collectibles to bags to shoes. And Whatnot basically is a world of small marketplaces of people selling stuff that's like part of the cultural zeitgeist, I would say.
And when you spoke to the CEO, Grant LaFontaine, he said that Whatnot started with Funko Pops. Now, this may be the Brit in me. I don't know what a Funko Pop is. What is that?
Okay, so a Funko Pop is kind of like a little doll. It looks kind of like an action figure type thing, and it can be for anything. Like there are Funko Pops for sports teams, for anime characters. What is your favorite TV show?
The Pit right now.
There's probably Funko Pops of Dr. Robbie that exists somewhere. There is a Funko Pop for anything you could be a fan of.
Let's throw to a clip and see more.
Funko Pops play a key role in the origin story of Whatnot. Can you explain the relationship between the beginnings of Whatnot and the Funko Pop bobbleheads?
One of the things that is difficult when you start a new business, in particular a marketplace business, is you need to be able to create a great experience for someone, but you don't have that many people. So the early team of Whatnot was basically 3.5 people. Half because one of the guys was part-time, our original designer, John. And if you have 3.5 people, if you try and focus on the whole world, you're going to build a poor experience for a bunch of people, which means no one's ever going to come and use it. And so we wanted to find one set of users that we thought we could provide a really great experience for. And at that point in time, some of our friends and us had started to buy Funko Pops, so we had them. And then we looked at the numbers too. We're like, okay, how many are being sold? Can you just big enough opportunity to at least get something started? But we thought it was, there's a couple $100 million worth of sales, at least on the secondary market, pretty narrow audience, and people were really into them. And so we just thought that was like a good starting place.
So interesting. So why is Whatnot booming? I think it's worth $20 billion at this point, when other similar platforms like QVC are really financially struggling.
Well, it is really interesting, right? Because the other thing about Whatnot that I was sort of entranced by when I started covering them was back when I was covering Amazon, I watched Amazon fail to make live selling happen. Live selling has been huge in China, but hasn't really succeeded in the US since kind of peak QVC. I mean, I think a couple of things happened with Whatnot. The first was this kind of niche audience approach. They didn't try to boil the ocean, right? They were like, we know people like Funko Pops. We know people are willing to buy them in this format. Actually, the first time that they ever sold on the Whatnot platform was Grant in a rental house, basically gathering all the Funko Pops they had and saying, all right, let's just host a live stream and see what happens. And they've kind of done that and built piece by piece in all sorts of different verticals. Like one thing I tell people is my brother's actually a Whatnot seller.
What does he sell?
Star Wars collectibles mostly, but also One Piece cards, some Pokemon cards. And it's one of those things like, my brother has a specific audience who's extremely excited about a set of Star Wars collectibles.
Do you collect anything, Allie?
I collect some records. I collect maps. I don't collect anything that's like really like Whatnot worthy, probably. But I have definitely watched some live streams. I've watched my brother's live streams, actually.
And what kind of investors are interested in a company like Whatnot at the time of this huge AI boom, when there's so many sparkly companies that they could be funneling money into?
One thing I love about Whatnot to this end is it is both on trend in the scheme of the wider world. Actually, you can kind of figure out what's interesting about like what people are excited about in culture around Whatnot. Like Labubu's really popped off on Whatnot. However, in Silicon Valley, really out of vogue. It's not AI anything. Like at one point I asked Grant, I was like, are you an AI company? He's like, absolutely not. And most people at this point, if you ask, they'll hedge in some way. And the answer is a lot of investors. And to be fair, at this point, Whatnot's pretty consensus. But like investors like Google's Capital G have backed the company 3 times.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's one of those things, like I do think about Whatnot as a sort of consumer business that is good at capturing the zeitgeist, but exists kind of outside the AI bubble.
And what's the pricing point like for these Funko Pops, for instance? Can you make serious money?
I think people can. I think people do. Whatnot is a place ultimately where I think a lot of folks are building what you and I would consider big, small businesses, completely online and around sometimes Star Wars collectibles.
Allie, you've opened my eyes to a whole new world that I didn't know existed. Thank you. Next up, I'm chatting to Kristin Stoller about the future of work and specifically hiring. Kristin, hello. So you've just got off the plane back from Vegas, where you were at a big AI conference. Tell us what you learned. What were your main takeaways about AI and the future of work?
Yes, so I was talking to people all about AI and the future of hiring. And I think the part that shocked me, and we've talked about this a lot at Fortune, but it's about this AI hiring doom loop where candidates are using AI to make resumes, recruiters are using AI to screen it out. So it's like, is there really a human in the hiring process anymore? So I talked to a lot of people about that. And a lot of recruiters told me that the resumes they are getting are so overfit for positions that they just want to throw out the resume.
What does overfit mean on a concrete level?
I think it basically means that candidates will see a job posting, feed it into AI, and say, tailor my resume to hit this. And then you're getting like all of these buzzwords from the job posting showing up in resumes. And you're like, clearly, this is AI. This is not a human.
So if someone's listening to this, they are applying for jobs, where is the line? Should they be using AI to look for listings? Should they not be using AI at all for their resumes? What would your advice be?
So I've heard a bunch of different perspectives. I talked to a professor at Columbia at AI4 who told me, sure, use AI to help you, but make sure that your human skills are coming through. Don't use every single word AI tells you. Think about it as a human and think about the human on the other end. And then I talked to another recruiter who told me, I will throw out any resume that I can tell uses AI. So don't use it, only use your human skills. So it's tough. You have to walk the line, but I think the real differentiator then is going to be the interview, right? Because that is where you can actually showcase that you're not a robot.
What tactics are HR professionals using to really hone in on whether or not this person is who they say they are?
That's a great question. So the one, I talked to someone at the Project Management Institute, and she's hiring, and she said, what I ask for is methodology now. I am asking questions about, if you are using AI to do some kind of project, walk me through, the prompts you put in, where you go next, what your next steps are. So she wants, the full A to Z methodology. And then I talked to another professor at Johns Hopkins University who told me that she's thinking about the ethics. And she's asking candidates, just because you can use AI, should you? And where are you using AI and why? And that's kind of getting to the heart of it.
And let's flip onto the other side of this conversation. How are companies using AI to find the right candidates?
Recruiters are using it to screen out people, to search for people. The interesting part, and what I really want to dive in more in my reporting, is it feels still like a black box. Recruiters aren't telling me exactly, here is how we are using it exactly. I don't know if it's embarrassment. I don't know if it's just that they don't want to share the secrets yet. But we know they're using it. We just don't know how.
And they're not saying it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
If I'm applying for a job in 2026, how do I make my resume sit at the top of that pile?
I think what you have to do is really highlight the things that are unique to you that AI could never come up with. I also do want to caution people, because one thing that I found in my reporting on this trip was that AI can be good in hiring.
Should you put on your resume that you have a competency in AI and what you've used it for?
That's a great question. I haven't asked anyone that. That, I think, is the next one I'm going to ask. But I'm wondering, is it kind of like, putting Microsoft Word on your resume today, where it's everyone should be using AI? Everyone has proficiency in Word? I think I just took it off 5 years ago because I was like, why is PowerPoint still on my resume?
It's like saying, I know how to send an attachment. Kristin, thank you so much. Where can people find more of your reporting?
They can find it by subscribing to my newsletter, the Fortune Workplace Innovation newsletter, and check out my LinkedIn and my socials.
Thank you so much. See you soon. That's it for Fortune Daily. I'm Ellie Austin. See you next time.